Yo, what's good YouTube? It's your boy Vade, aka Pro Bench. I'm not bringing you another Duel Links video. This video is about Counter Fairies and their chance of being meta relevant in today's Duel Links meta. Now, what Counter Fairies are is a series of fairy cards that have interactions with counter traps, and when counter traps are activated, they get their effects popping and they can control the board because counter traps are used to stop your opponent from advancing their plays. So what Superb Taya has brought us is actually, let me go into her rewards, is a counter trap right here called Divine Punishment. This says, activate only if Sanctuary in the Sky, the field spell for fairies, is on the field, negate the activation of a spell, trap card, or effect monster's effect, and destroy that card. This is a really strong counter trap because it negates pretty much anything in the game for free, as long as you have the field spell Sanctuary in the Sky on the field. Now, Sanctuary in the Sky is not the strongest field spell. It's not even that good of a field spell in general. It literally just says damage done by a battle with a fairy card, a fairy monster, is reduced to 0. So it kind of protects you from battle damage, but like other than that, it's kind of ass. And it also implies for your opponent too. So like, let's say your opponent is playing Cyber Angels. If they attack your fairy type monster, you take no damage, and if you attack their fairy type monster, you take no damage. So like, it kind of makes games take a little too long, to be completely honest. But Divine Punishment, the fact that we can get it at 3 is really strong, as long as we have something to search the field spell, which now we do with Zeratia's Herald of Heaven. When this card is pitched from the hand, you can just draw a field. You can draw a field spell card out from your deck straight to your hand, which you can instantly play it and set Divine Punishment, since they are now live with the field spell on the field. If this card is on the field and there's no field spell, you have to destroy it. So it's kind of like, actually it's exactly like Elemental Hero Captain Gold and I believe Archfiend General, which share the same stat line as it, 2100 attack, 800 defense. So it's a really strong card to run 3 of because it searches your field spell and is also a big beater if the field spell is on the field. Also level 4, 2100, you don't really get that often. The next card she has got us that is actually something you want to play in the deck is Meltiel, Sage of the Sky. If this card is on the field and you activate a counter trap, you gain 1000 life points, and if the field spell is also on the field, you get to pop another card for free, which is an amazing effect because you start to if you're playing a counter trap, you most likely are negating and destroying your opponent's card, and then you get to destroy another one of your opponent's cards. So you neg to your opponent. So that's really strong there for the cost of just this card on the field. Of course, with the field spell and a counter trap. So that's a lot of investment. But once you get that going, you start to establish your field and you actually can take control of the game, which is really good. Other cards that she drops as honorable mention is Harvest Angel of Wisdom, which gets you your counter trap back to your hand from the graveyard if it gets destroyed by battle, which is very iffy. I don't think anyone's going to be slamming into this if it means that the person who controlled this gets a free Divine Punishment back. So it's essentially like running a 4th Divine Punishment. So it's not really that useful because I don't see anybody attacking into it and actually destroying it by battle. Also, Radiant Gerald has the most situational effect in the world. When this card is sent to the graveyard except for destroyed by battle, gain 1000 life points if the field spell is on the field. So if the field spell is not on the field, you do nothing. You get nothing. But this can be useful if you summon it with the field spell on the field and you use, let's say, something like Transmodify to get into Tethys, which is a card I'm going to be discussing in a little bit. Yeah, you gain 1000. Or if you pitch this with Divine Wrath to activate the counter trap, yeah, you gain 1000 if the field spells on the field. But other than that, it's completely useless. It's not useful at all. Also, if you tribute over it, since it has a 2000 defense, then you gain 1000 if field spells on the field. But other than that, it's not useful at all. I don't see anybody ever running it. So you guys see on the left the deck that I built for Counter Fairies. Have I been having success with it? Yes and no. While it has led to some successful matches where I have completely taken the field completely, it had led to some matches where, you know, because my monsters are only 1600 attack, my opponents just summon a beater to then destroy my monster, and then once I don't have any counter traps to interact with their monsters, then they start to build their field, since my monsters are fairly easy to run over. So that's one issue I really have with this deck, is that some decks like SSA or anything like, let's say Hammer Shark decks just summon Hammer Shark and just attack you because they have 1700 attack and you are running a limited amount of monsters. They can just literally just beat you down. Like, that's it. Sea Stealth attack decks as well can literally just beat you down without activating anything to activate your counter traps. They don't necessarily need Sea Stealth attack if your monsters are only 1600 attack and you're praying that you have a Super Rush Headlong to destroy them. Like, that's it's literally just a waiting game at that point. So I did throw in some Wall of Disruptions to have some better like counter play, so opponents not letting me activate my counter traps. But we're gonna discuss a couple tech monsters, which I believe you guys should already know, but we're gonna go and discuss them in length, and also a couple tech counter traps to be running into the deck. Now, first with the monsters. First monster I want to talk about is a monster that a lot of people on YouTube have been talking about, Valdalion, the Dark Dragon Lord. Now, it is a dark monster, it is also a dragon, so it's the complete opposite of the deck, the monsters in your deck, which can be a good thing if your opponent is running something like Super Rush Headlong. You can now attack with Valdalion and not get destroyed because they're going to be calling Light Fairy. And it's also a bad thing because, you know, it's like everything just works for fairies. It doesn't necessarily work for fairies. It's the field spell works for fairies, and if they get rid of Valdalion, if Valdalion's the only one, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I just don't like the fact that it's a card that you only have one of. So praying that you have it when you activate a counter trap to get its effects off, it's kind of like a Hail Mary at that point. And you look at its effects, you can special summon it whenever a counter trap is resolved, and depending on what the counter trap negated, it gets a specific effect. If it's a spell, you get 1500 burn damage to your opponent. Trap, you target one card your opponent controls and destroy it. And monster, you target one card in your graveyard and special summon it. Monster, you kind of don't want as much because you're not gonna, other than Zeradius, that's like the only monster you're gonna want to special summon in your graveyard. So not really the best, but trap and spell are actually pretty decent because they kind of speed the game up. You keep negging your opponent, or you get them with a lot of burn damage plus a 2800 body onto the field. That's actually pretty strong. Another card you can be running is Tethys, Goddess of Light. It's the card that you can pick up from the Pick a Gift campaign. It's the middle card, I believe it is. It says when this card is faced up on the field, when you draw a fairy type monster, you can reveal that monster to draw one more card. Now this card can help you dig into your deck to get your counter traps or spell cards, namely Super Rush Headlong and Divine Punishment, because it is not once per turn. If this card is on the field, you can draw into, let's say, Bountiful Artemis, show it to your opponent, draw another card. Let's say you draw into another Bountiful Artemis, you draw another card, and you don't stop until you see a spell or a trap, which can really help you out in getting the cards you specifically need for your matchup. But getting this to the field may be a struggle because it may be a brick on its own. You may have to tribute it onto the field, which means that you have to have kept your monster on the field alive, which, you know, it's not hard when you're playing counter traps, but you kind of want to up your monster presence on the field and not take your only monsters off the field to then put another monster on the field that can be disrupted. So that's kind of ass. I think the other way you can get it out is transmodify. All your other fairies are level 4 light fairies. This is a level 5 light fairy, so you can just transmodify it up onto the field, and that's another decent way to get it out to the field, but you're also still just one monster on your field to put it one other monster on your field. And also your fairies that are level 4 light fairies have interactions with counter traps that actually are better than just Tethys on the field, which you don't get use of her effect until your draw phase next turn, if that. So I don't know if it's that good, but having a 2400 body in a deck where the strongest monster that you're kind of going to keep on the field taps out at 1600, you can have a Zeradius on the field, But it's like, once again, you're running Counter Fairies. You're going to be aiming to get those Counter Fairies onto the field. Duradius is not your go-to monster to summon, but if you have to summon it, you will summon it. This is the next strongest one, and other than if you're running Valdalian, so like, it's, I don't know, there's way too much of a brick potential with this that it's just not good in my eyes. Especially if you're a late game, you need to top deck a monster and you top deck this, you can't even summon it or special summon it right off the bat, so it's kind of ass cheeks right there. Another nice cute tech card you're gonna see in Counter Fairy decks is Ties of the Brethren. This is a card that Counter Fairies actually run in the TCG. Since you pay 2 Gs, you summon 2 other monsters from your deck that are the same level, type, and attribute as the monster you have on the field. So level 4 Light Fairy, that's literally the rest of your deck. And they just have to have different names, which means that you can get more Counter Fairies onto the field that have interactions with your counter traps and have an established board. When your opponent finally makes a play, not only do you negate their play, you then now gain 1,000 life points and pop a monster on the field and draw a card. So that's actually pushing your deck to have an established control on the field. I've used it. I think it's really good. Maybe since I only have 1, it's kind of ass. But if I had 2, maybe I'd run it in the deck and just hope that you go first. And that's a big issue with this deck, is that you want to go first. If you don't go first, your deck is already like 60% behind of the game, because you're literally just playing counter traps and weak monsters. So if you can't go first, you know, try your best. But if you're going first, you can establish a pretty solid board. Last card I'm actually going to discuss, I don't really need to cut to, is actually Solemn Scolding. Now, there are other counter traps you can run in this deck. You can run Divine Wrath, but all the other counter traps, Divine Wrath, Ultimate Providence, Divine Punishment kind of covers it. It's just the exact same card without the discard. You can just do all of that. So I like that it doesn't have the discard like Divine Wrath and Ultimate Providence. But where this let me go to that card. Where this card is better than Divine Wrath and Ultimate Providence, those cards are better than this card, because this card relies on the field spell being on the field. So if your opponent Cosmic Cyclones away your field spell, tough tits, your back row is now dead. So I kind of like, if you're gonna have like, this deck is gonna be 3 Divine Punishment. I see maybe 1 Divine Wrath or 2 Divine Wrath, or 1 or 2 Ultimate Providence along with it, if you don't want to completely rely on the field spell being completely active on the field, because opponents will get wise to it and will get rid of the field spell to destroy your whole back row. The same way that people Cosmic Cyclone off Umi or Legendary Ocean against Sea Stealth attack decks, because sure, you can get rid of the Sea Stealth attack, but they can just set more Sea Stealth attacks. But if you get rid of the field spell, no matter how many Sea Stealth attacks they put in the back row, they're all dead. So until they play another field spell. So that's the same notion that would happen with Counter Fairies, is that they'll get rid of the field spell, hoping that you don't have another field spell ready to go to set and reanimate, pretty much bring back to life your back row. So back to Scolding. Scolding is really good because it's a strong counter trap. It negates anything. It negates a normal summon. It negates effects. It negates spell, it negates trap. You just have to pay 3 Gs, and if you have Meltiel on the field, you gain 1,000 life points back anyway. So you can establish a board, play this, only be at 2,000 life points, and continue to control the board, which is really strong. But the one thing that sets this back is the first line. If this card is the only set card in your spell and trap zone, which means it's not active if you have any other card alongside it. I've seen a replay against in the mirror where someone played 2 Solemn Scoldings in their back row, and the only way I knew that is like I looked at his deck and I'm like, okay, why didn't he activate any counter traps against me? And I'm thinking the only way he had a dead back row is he had 2 Solemn Scoldings in his back row, since he was running 2 Solemn Scoldings, because it requires it to be the only back row you have, which means if you have it as your only back row, you have to smartly negate something. Like if your opponent goes Hey Trunade, yeah, maybe you don't want to negate Hey Trunade, but that's the only option you have. It's going to be sent back to your hand. But let's say if your opponent is playing Cyber Angels, you can't negate like the early rituals. You can't negate you Ben 10 or Eda 10. You're gonna wait to negate Dakini, or wait to negate what's this thing, Sarifa, like those cards. Saphira, wow, you're gonna wait to negate one of those. So you have to patiently play Solemn Scolding. Like in my experience, I was playing against C Stealth Attack. My opponent had no monster on the field, C Stealth Attack in his back row, and Umi on the field, or Legendary Ocean already on the field. So he flipped up his C Stealth Attack because it was face down. That's how I knew it. He flipped up C Stealth Attack, and he only had 2 cards in his hand. I'm thinking, okay, I negate C Stealth Attack, and he probably doesn't have something in his hand that can like completely fuck me over. So I negated C Stealth Attack. He then proceeds to summon Legendary Fisherman 2 and just wrecks my face for the next couple turns because I have no life points after that. So it was really bad. But that's why I'm only running Scolding at 1. If we had Strike or Judgment, which would be way too busted and actually wouldn't actually work for Duel Links, but I'm only running it at 1. It's useful, it's really good, but I really like Punishment way better. So this is my deck. I'm gonna get into some replays because even though I don't think this is gonna be meta relevant, I think it'll be like tier 3 at best. It does leave you with really fun matches. So I'm gonna leave you with those really fun matches that I had, and I'm gonna get going. Peace.
Chance to make a change. No, you're never gonna get it. Not this time.